So this is a seriously old Android box. We are talking 1 gigs RAM, Android 6. I mean, just pretty much everything about this box is just falling apart. Now, I actually purchased this from eBay for less than £20 just to see that with these older Android boxes, what else could we do with them? I mean, are they really just ready for the bin now, or could we potentially repurpose them for something else? Well, as we can see here, guys, this box does actually have an SD card slot. So let me now just plug that in. Let me now just pull out the power cable, plug that back in, and just look at that, guys. We've now turned this old Android box into a complete retro gaming station. I can now use my joypad. We can see my PSP games, PlayStation, Sinclair Spectrum, Megadrive, Master System, Game Gear, Dreamcast, Sega 32X, Neogeo. I mean, pretty much every console, every legacy system you could think of, I can now start enjoying all of those games on this old legacy Android box. So for example, if I want to go to my Megadrive, let's click on that. And now I see all of my Megadrive games. We get to see all of the artwork. We can see some information about the game. And let's say, for example, I want to play Streets of Rage. I can click on that. Let's now press start again. And there we are, guys. We're now enjoying all of these classic retro games on this old Android box that was pretty much ready for the bin. And I'm so impressed with the performance. I mean, if I can get performance like this on a box that costs less than £20, imagine if your box costs £30 or £40. It would just be amazing. Take that. And anytime I want to exit, I can press 2 buttons together and I'm back to my home screen, and I can now start enjoying all of these other amazing games. And the amazing thing is, as soon as I take the card out, I can then go back to my old original Android box if I want to do that. So you're not making any permanent changes. All of the things that you see here is all being run from this micro SD card. So in this video today, let me show you the exact steps you need to follow so you can also turn your old legacy Android box into an amazing one-stop retro gaming machine. So do take a moment to hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So with all of that being said, let's get started.
If you're new to the channel and you want to stay up to date with the latest tech tutorials, the latest Fire Stick, Android and Android TV tips and tricks, then please do subscribe and hit the notification bell. It's a small click from you, but it makes a big difference to me. Thank you. Okay, so for this process to work, we need to have just 2 physical things. We need to have an Android box which has an Emuelec chipset, so anything like an S905 or S912 or even some of the newer S905 X2 devices, all of those will work fine. But it does mean that if you have an Android box that runs the Rock chipset or maybe the All-Winner, unfortunately Emuelec does not work on that. So you have to have an Emuelec chipset. Once you've confirmed that, the next thing we need is a micro SD card. Now, you can actually follow this process using a standard USB drive, but on my device I found the USB performance to be really slow and I got much better performance using a micro SD card. So personally I would actually recommend using that, and you can typically get a 32 gig memory card for less than £10 or $10, and I do recommend getting a branded one like SanDisk. Once you have that, we now need to get some software. Now if you go to my website and in the tutorials page, you can see I have created a tutorial on how you can convert your old Android box into a retro gaming station. And here we can see some information about Emuelec. We can see some of the emulators it supports. Let's scroll down. And here, just to confirm that it is only for Emuelec devices. So now on my device, on that old Android box, I'm running an S905X chipset, which is fairly old. Let's scroll down. Now in terms of software, we need to have just 3 things. We need to have the Emuelec ISO image, which I'll show you in just a second. We need to have some software to write that image to the SD card, and in my example I'm going to use Win32 Writer. And lastly, we need to have an application to transfer those games or those ROMs from our PC directly onto the SD card once we plug that into our Android box. Let's get the first thing. Let's click on this here. You can look at some of the install notes, keep going down, and here we can see all of the different Emuelec images. Now you'll also need some kind of program like WinZip or 7-zip or WinRAR to expand these files, because the actual image file is inside a zip file. Okay, so in my example, because I'm running an S905X chipset, the image I need is the Emuelec 37 generic. Now if you have a newer device like a S905X2 or X3 or some of the newer chipsets, go for this one up here, which is also called generic, but it has NG in the name. And in fact, if I go back to my website, I think I did actually label, yeah, here. So here we can just confirm that if you have an older device like a 905 or 905X or S912, use this generic image. And if you have one of the newer boxes with the newer chipset, use the one that has NG in the name. So I'm going to go for this generic one over here. Let's click on that. Let's save that file. And that's now being downloaded. And if I open up the downloaded file, we can see it contains a single IMG file, and that's the image that we're going to burn. So let me now extract this to my desktop. Okay, so here is the file expanded. I'll just put it into a folder on my desktop, and this is the Win32 disk image writer that I'm going to use. But if you're more familiar with Rufus or Etcher, you can use any program that you like. Okay, so let's now select the image file, and just make sure you have the right drive selected, which has your SD card or your USB drive. Once you confirm that, let's click on write. Click on yes, and that will then burn that image onto your SD card or USB drive. And there's only one quick thing we have to do once this is finished, and then your SD card or your USB drive is ready to plug into your Android device. And this was now being burnt onto your SD card or your USB drive. And the last thing we have to do is just copy one file from device trees to replace this file here. And that file is called dtb.img. So I can now just delete this out. Now the question is, which file do you copy? Well, let's go into that now. And the file that you need to copy is based on your device type, your Android box. So what CPU it has, what RAM it has, and its current configuration. Now, fortunately, the guys at Emuelec, if we go back onto their website, we can see they've given us some examples here. So if you have an S905 device, go for this. If you have a 905X, go for that. And further down, there's actually a more detailed link. So if I click on this here, let's go to that now. And here we can see, if I make this a bit bigger, and here we can see we have a lot of different boxes like the A95X, the B-Link, and then depending on what device you have. So if I have an A95X with 1 gig RAM with 8 gig storage, this is the file I need. Oh, with this CPU, then this is the file I need. If I have a B-Link Mini with 2 gigs RAM, 16 gig storage with this CPU, then this is the file that I need. Now in my example, the box I have is this BQ M9C. Now mine is actually the Pro, which only has 1 gig RAM and 8 gig storage. There is a separate one with 2 gigs RAM, which actually has a separate file. But this is definitely my box with this CPU. So the file I need to copy is GXL P212 with 1G at the end for the 1 gig RAM. So let's now find this file. So GXL P212 1G. Let's go back. So there is the file there, guys. So once you find the file, just do a right click, do a copy, go back to the top. And in the root of your USB drive or your SD card, let's paste that file and just rename that file to DTB. So DTB.img, press enter, click on yes, and that's now all done. Now, if you do notice that when you plug this card into your Android box and it doesn't actually boot properly, or maybe you just get a blank screen, that means this file that you've copied is actually incorrect for your system. All you need to do then is go back to device trees and try one of the other ones, copy it out and rename it to dtb.img, and then try booting your box again. Okay, let's now plug this in and let's see what happens.
Okay, so you've got your micro SD card that you've just formatted and installed Emuelec onto. Once you have that, you want to plug that into your Android box, and we now need to make the box boot from the SD card and not the internal storage. Now the easiest way to do that is just to hold down the reset button. If your box doesn't have a reset button, you can actually install an application from the Play Store. I think it's called App Update or Reboot to Update, and that will force your box to reboot from the SD card. But in my example, we can see my box does have a reset button over here. Now, depending on your box, you may find the reset button is actually inside one of the other ports, like maybe the audio ports. So do have a look online. But in my example, because the button is there, I'm going to pull out the power cable. Okay, that's now gone off. And then I'm going to use a small pin or a small screwdriver. I'm going to hold the reset button down. There we can hear the click there. There's the click. And I'm going to plug the power cable back in. And let's see if this actually works first time without any editing. Okay, that's gone back in. And this should now hopefully boot from the memory card. Okay, we get the logo from the box. And as soon as you see that, you can actually let go of the reset button. And we're now booting into Emuelec. And the first thing that the operating system does, or Emuelec does, is actually expands the storage on your micro SD card. So it does a couple of things. It says it's now rebooting in 15 seconds. Let's let it do that. Then I'll show you exactly how you can configure this, then how you can then transfer ROMs from your PC or from your computer directly onto the card here. We can now turn this back to the right way, because this should now boot into Emuelec, and we can see it's done exactly that. Okay, let's give that a second. I've already plugged in my USB gamepad. This is actually an Xbox One control pad that I'm using with the micro USB cable. Okay, it's doing some of the initial config there, and this will only happen the first time you start it. And there we are, guys. Within a couple of seconds, we've now booted into the Emuelec operating system. So do give a thumbs up for that. Okay, let's watch this video for a second. Nice bit of punch out there. Okay, so it says one gamepad detected. Let's now configure the gamepad. It says hold down the A button to start configuring. So let me do that now. Let's hold this down. Okay, we can now go through the motions here. So I need to press the button for D-pad up. So up, down, left, right. Let's do start, select. Okay, let's do A, B, X, Y. So A, B, X, Y. So you've got left shoulder, left trigger, right trigger, left thumb, right thumb, then left analog up, down, left, right, then right, up, down, left, right. Then you have the hotkeys. So I'm going to go for this button here. Now the hotkey is used for various things inside your emulator, like bring up the emulation menu, quit the emulator, or change some of the settings. So it's very important you know which key you're binding to this. So I'm going to go for this one over here. That's mapped as button 8. Click on A or press A. And there we are, guys. So this is basically the default screen in Emuelec when you start it for the first time. Now, in case you're wondering, why don't you see, SNES or Megadrive or MAME, this will only show you the emulators once you install some ROMs for it. So, for example, if I transfer some Game Boy Advance ROMs, we will then see Game Boy Advance in the menu. But by default, I think it comes with a couple of ports. Some of these basic games over here. Okay, but let's go ahead and configure this now. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to configure the networking. So let's press the start button. Let's go into network settings. Now, of course, depending on your box, you can either use Ethernet, but in my example, I'm going to go for wireless. So the first thing we need to do is actually enable Wi-Fi. Let's go down to that and enable. Okay, we now need to provide the SSID and the key. Let me quickly do that now. It says Wi-Fi enabled. Let's click on OK. Let's go back into that again. And we now get an IP address. So this is the IP address of Emuelec, and we can now use this IP address to connect to from our PC or any other device, and then transfer some games and ROMs onto it. So let's back out for that. Now, before we just transfer the games, I also like to change the theme. So let's go to updates and downloads. Let's go to themes. And we now can choose some of these available themes. So the theme that I like is, let's go for Spin Master. Give that a second. Once that's done, we can now press the back button. We get the message that the theme is now installed. So I can now go to UI settings, click on that, and select the theme. And I can now choose the Spin Master theme. Press the B button to go back. And just like that, guys, we are now using a different theme. And once again, we don't see any of the other consoles yet because we don't have any games on our device just yet. We have the IP address there ending in 153. So let's now jump over to my PC and I'll show you how you can send ROMs from your PC directly onto the SD card. Once the ROMs are on there, I'll then show you how you can get the artwork, so we can get the box art, the game information and everything else. So let's jump over to my PC.
Okay, so here we are on my PC. I've just opened up FileZilla, and of course the link for this will be on the tutorials page. Now, when you start FileZilla, the first thing it asks you is what is the host name or IP address, the username and password. Now, as we know from my box, the IP address was 192.168.0.153. The default password for Emuelec is just root, and then Emuelec, so that's EMUELEC, and it has to be on port 22 for SFTP. Let's type that in and click on connect. Let's click on OK. And there we are, guys. So all of these folders are actually on the SD card that's currently plugged into my Android box. So transferring ROMs, guys, is just drag and drop. We can see this audio folder here for ROMs. Let's open that up. And we now have the respective folders for each of those different systems. So you have Arcade, you have Amiga, and pretty much every console and system under the sun. So let's say, for example, I want to transfer some Megadrive games. So I'll go to the Megadrive folder. Let's open that up. I then find the Megadrive ROMs on my machine. And just for a test, let's say we want to transfer Afterburner, maybe Aladdin, and also Alien 3. So we have 3 things selected. Let's now drag them across. And those 3 files have now been copied over to the SD card that's plugged into my Android box. Let's just do 2 more systems. Let's just go for a bit of NES. Let's find my NES games. Let's go for 1942, Adventure Island, and this one here. Let's transfer 3 games across. Let's do some Neogeo. Let's click on that. Let's find my Neogeo ROMs. Okay, so we've transferred 9 games in total across 3 different systems. Now, certain emulators like PlayStation or even Neogeo, they will actually require you to find some BIOS files. And when you do find your files, which you can get by a quick Google search, you'll see there is a dedicated folder for BIOS, which is here. So if you do get any kind of BIOS files, you need to transfer them into this folder. So let me now transfer the BIOS files for Neogeo. And that BIOS has now been transferred across. So let's now jump over to our Android box and I'll show you how you can now download the artwork and some of the other bits for these games.
Okay, so we've transferred those 9 games. Let's see what happens on the home screen. Let's go back again. And you'll notice that you don't actually see any of those new games. And what we need to do is get the system to do a rescan. Now the way we do that is we press the start button, go to game settings and select the option update games list. Let's select that now. Click on yes, and we can see now straight away we have Megadrive, we have Neogeo, and we have NES. Now if I go into Megadrive, for example, and they're the 3 games. Now as you can see, guys, we have no artwork, no information about these games. So how do we get that? Well, once again, if we back out of this, press the start button, go down, and select scrape. Let's click on that. Now we have 2 scrape sources, either Screen Scraper or the Games DB. Now I personally prefer to use the second one, so just select Games DB, click on Scrape Now, and click on Start. Let's give that a second. We can see it's scraping on the top right. Once that's done, and it says they refresh the games list to apply the changes. So let's go back to Game Settings, click on Update, click on Yes again, and let's now go back into Megadrive. And there it is, guys. We now have beautiful artwork. We get to see the information about the game, and we have all of this information. Let's back out of that. Let's try the other one, this one. Again, we can see all the information, and that's working absolutely fine. Now, one last thing I recommend before we actually start playing games is if you go back into the Start menu, go down, go to System Settings, go to Developer, and I actually prefer to increase the vRam to about 250 meg, and that just helps with some of the UI and some of the graphics. So once you've set that, of course you can experiment on your device and maybe increase it if you want, but let's just leave 250 meg for now. Press back again, and we're back to the home screen. So let's say, for example, we want to go to Megadrive. Let's try Aladdin, and that's working absolutely fine. Now, if you want to customize some of the emulator settings, like maybe you want to have some smoother graphics instead of the original graphics, if you press the 2 controller buttons together, let's exit out of RetroArch. Now, when you're inside any of these systems, if you press the select button, we can see we now get some extra options. So I can now go down, go to advanced system options, and where it says smooth games, I can actually turn that on. So I'm forcing the graphics to be a bit more smoothed out. So once we've done that, let's go back. Let's start the game again, and we can see it looks a lot more smoother straight away. But I know some of you may prefer the authentic pixelated look. That makes it look a lot nicer. Alright, let's see how quickly I can do this. I'm just running like a madman. But that's working absolutely fine. Really nice. Let's start with some PlayStation gameplay. Let's go for some X-Men. Okay, let's press start. Let's go for battle mode. Okay, let's go for good old Ken and Ryu, and let's see what kind of performance we get when we try to emulate the PlayStation on this old box with just 1 gig's RAM, guys. I cannot believe this box only has 1 gig's RAM, and that's emulating absolutely fine. All right, let's see if I can do some special moves. Take that. All right, there you go. So you can see, guys, this box, even with its tiny 1 gig's RAM, has no problem emulating the PlayStation 1. Let's see if I can finish with a super move. There you go. TDUK knows how to play Street Fighter. Alright, so now depending on which emulator you're using, they all do have shortcuts on how you can get back to the home screen. So I think for PlayStation it's these two buttons together. There we go. So we can now go back to press the back button, and I can now select Quit RetroArch. Let's try some PSP. Let's do Wipeout again. So this is actually the default PSP resolution, and we can see when playing with these settings, the game is super smooth. But as I previously mentioned, you can actually upscale the graphics depending on how powerful your box is. And of course this box is not powerful at all, but let me just show you what that looks like. So to do that in this game, I'm going to press the hotkey with X. There we go. I can now, for example, save the state, save the game and load the game. But if I go to settings on the right, we can see here by default the resolution is just 1 times PSP, but I can click on that and say, for example, I want 2 times PSP. And of course, the further down you get, the nicer that the game will look, but it will be more demanding for your box. And again, in my example, I used the worst box I could find. But if you have a box that costs maybe $40 or $50, you'll be able to easily do 2 or 3 times PSP resolution. Let's just do 2 times for now. Let's back out of this, back again. And we can see, guys, it's now kind of like smooth off the edges. And it's still fairly smooth, but it's not as smooth as before. All right, let's see if I can catch up. But still, I mean, who would have thought on a box that costs less than £20 with just 1 gig's RAM, we can play games like this, or really just have a complete retro gaming station. And all of that, once again, is running from that micro SD card. So we haven't actually changed any of the file system or the storage on here. Everything's run from that memory card. Let's try something a bit more powerful like Dreamcast. Let's do Crazy Taxi. Okay, let's see how this box handles Dreamcast. Alright, Axel. And the great thing is this game actually has rumble support, so my controller is actually vibrating right now. Alright, let's go to Accelerate. Let's pick somebody up. Let's see if I can drop this person off. But this guy, as we can see, is actually very smooth. Alright, so let's pick somebody up. Alright, not that one. Let's pick this person up. But that's actually playing really nicely, guys. And the vibration on the control is really good as well. Alright, let's drop this person off. Let's try some Neogeo. Okay, so on Neogeo and arcade games, if you want to add a virtual coin, you press the select button. There we go. 1 coin, 2 credits. Let's press start. Now all of these emulators also allow you to save the state, and what that means is you can basically save your position in the game wherever you are, and the next time you open the game you can then just load that state so you don't have to start from the beginning again. So let's say, for example, I'm playing this right now and I want to now save the state. So the way you do that is you bring up your emulator menu. So let's try the 2 hotkeys. I can now go to save state. And you can see it says save state in slot 0. And each of the emulators does have multiple save slots. So now, for example, I want to go back to my save state. I can press the same buttons again. Go to load state, and that should take me back to where I previously saved it. And we can see it's done exactly that. So it's a great feature that all of these games actually will allow you to save the state and hopefully give you a chance of actually completing them. I mean, really, guys, I don't know what else to show you. Just everything just works really nicely on here. All of the artwork, all of the information, everything just works great. And once again, I'm just so impressed that I can do all of this on a box like this. So that's all for this video, guys. Many thanks for watching. I do have another video planned where I'm going to upgrade the firmware of this device. As we saw at the start of this video, it's running really old Android 6. The UI looks really terrible, it looks really clunky. But what we can actually do is actually flash the firmware with an Android TV custom firmware, which will then give us a lot more options. It should look a lot nicer, and it should of course perform so much better. So I know lots of you still have these older devices, so hopefully you guys can follow that process and give these old devices a new lease of life. So many thanks for watching, guys. Many thanks for your support. Do leave a like if you did like this video, and I'll hopefully catch up with you guys real soon. Thanks.